All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. So today, we're going to dissect the topic of how to choose the correct driver loft for your game. There's lots of different ways to swing the golf club, and there's lots of great ways to match up your equipment to that swing. And loft is one of the most crucial elements of picking the right driver for you. We have to select the right loft to match your swing. We're going to dissect it all today. Okay guys, in the 50 different swings I've had over the last 12 months, I've ended up with 3 of the same driver model, 8 degree, 9 degree and 10 degree GT3 Titleist drivers. Incredible drivers, really have been, I think, the standout driver over the last couple of years. Just about to be replaced, as we all know, by the new GTS line. Really excited about that too. But at various points in trying to figure out what really is the best way for me to swing the golf club, I've had periods where I thought that the 10 degrees is the right one, the 9 degrees is the right one, and the 8 degrees is the right one. And lots of you out there probably have no idea with your specific swing characteristics which one will match up best for you. So we will dive into that today. We'll hit them all with the same shaft, same weighting, and on the exact same setting. So what we're doing is isolating the loft as the variable, and then obviously matching that up so that you guys can see what swing characteristics that you have and which match into the driver loft itself. Okay, so let's start off with the middle of the road. Let's go 9 degree, start in the middle. 8, 9, and 10 is what we have. Now with the loft sleeve, we can turn those drivers from 7.25 all the way up to 11.5. So it really is a wide range that we've got within 3 heads. Now, I'm not saying you all need 3 heads, but it certainly gives lots of different options. So let's start with the 9. Hey guys, before we get into today's video, I have one major favor to ask you guys. 52% of our audience are subscribers to this channel. 48 of you, almost half that watch these channels every single week, are not subscribers to the channel. It would mean the world to us if you guys joined us on the channel as subscribers. Hit that button and let us know that you're enjoying it by moving the needle on the subscriber count. It lets us know, it lets our partners know that you value the channel, and it would mean the world to us. We're on the journey to 100,000 followers. It would mean the world if we got there this year. Please do us a favor and subscribe to the channel today. All right, guys, we're going to start, as we said, in the middle, 9 degrees aloft. Very standard setup. A1 driver, for those of you who are aware or familiar with the SureFit Titleist chart, that is standard loft, standard lie. So playing exactly as it's set up in its neutral configuration. The weight is also in the middle of the driver. So nothing about this is enhanced for me specifically right now. So at my speed, I would say most golfers would choose a 9 degree driver. I don't think that's too controversial, right? If you're fairly neutral in your delivery, 9 degree at my speed, so call it around 108-ish, 108, 110, you're going to be in and around that 10 degree driver. And it's when you stray away from, call it neutral delivery sort of characteristics, that you then need something a little bit different, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more. So let's talk about that right now, what we deem to be a neutral delivery. Obviously the path, we want to be nice and neutral. We don't want that face with a fast closure rate. That typically lowers launch and spin. So you have to start with a little bit more loft. The opposite of that is the fader generally adds a little bit more loft. So you start with a little bit less loft. And that helps neutralize this term that we'll talk about a lot in this video, which is called spin loft. We'll try and put a little graphic on the screen. You know, I'm sure we've used it before, but the difference of the dynamic loft and the angle of attack, the difference between those is how we calculate the spin loft. And I'll kind of talk you through the numbers as we go on that. So I know for me, with a 9 degree driver and a neutral delivery, I'm going to deliver roughly 17 degrees aloft, give or take probably 1 degree, and I'm going to deliver about 4 degrees of upward angle of attack, okay? My happy place with driver is about 12 to 13 launch and about 2200 spin. Okay, so let's start with that with the 9 degree driver. Okay, nice drive. Had a touch of draw to it. Spin axis was a hair left. 4.9 upward angle attack, good strike, 1 degree out to in path. Pretty good stuff. Okay, let's hit a few more with this neutral delivery with the 9. A little calculation for the screen. Club head speed times 2.7 is about roughly, gives us about the distance that we should see. 107 times 2.7 is 291. That ball went 292 yards. So you can see that there are some ways of analysing yourself to see how optimised you are. On that particular delivery with that particular amount of speed, I can't really hit it any further unless I'm helped by an outside element such as wind, downhill, firm fairways, whatever that may be. So as far as a 9-degree driver goes, that is pretty much ideal. Okay, so fairly neutral ball flights out of the neutral delivery, obviously with the 9 degrees. Maybe a touch on the high side for me. Dynamic loft, I was keeping an eye on, was a little bit on the high side. Where my swing is at, that's kind of what's happening right now. So let's look at it from the other perspective. I would say those numbers, if we quickly look at the compare page case, I think it was pretty good. But I think it was a hair high in the launch angle. Spin was fine. Yeah, so delivery-wise, 0 path, 5 up with 20 degrees of loft. So the difference between those is about 15.2 on the spin loft. We want that to be about 13. So ideally, I want to be delivering closer to either 18 degrees of loft with that angle of attack, or we want to try and bring the angle of attack up. Now, I don't really want to bring angle of attack up to 7 to narrow that spin loft window. So I would rather keep the angle of attack up around, as I said, 4 and bring that dynamic loft down a little bit towards 17, which gives me the magic 13 when we look at that spin loft window. So let's go a little bit more towards a draw with this driver. Okay, still a little bit high on the launch. Much more favourable side of the driver head to hit it off, which for me is the toe side. Gives me way better stability. Okay, similar. Path did move 1.6 rightward. Let's change that. Let's make that a bit more draw. Yeah, see the flight coming down a little bit now. You'll see that dynamic loft change, but the volatility of the ball flight also changes with it. Okay, so actually, interestingly, the loft didn't come down too much. It was angle attack that went up. Said that was the one I didn't really want to happen. Okay, didn't catch that exactly where I wanted to in the head, but we are starting to see that loft come down relative to the angle of attack staying about the same. So we're kind of trending towards 13 and a half on the spin loft, which is going to start becoming much more efficient with the regards to the launch and spin. I mean, fairly ideal for the draw delivery. So we're kind of changed up enough of the delivery there. Path certainly quite a bit more to the right, and you'll see some changes in ball speed going up. I'll explain why that happened in a second. Launch coming down. So you can actually see, for me, the draw swing is a much more favourable swing to the tune of about 8 more yards without really sacrificing any of the distance. And let's go to the club data to explain why. Generally, for me, club head speed does go up when I start increasing the rate of rotation. And when I say increase the rate of rotation, when I'm swinging 3.4 degrees to the right, outward, into out, that way, I have to deliver the club face and then a faster rate of rotation. So I have to increase the speed of that club head in order to get it to catch up with where the path is moving. Now, that is a bit more of a volatile way to play the game. We are seeing that in this day and age of lower spin drivers. Certainly better players are leaning much more into the fade than they are to trusting the draw. I think equipment has really forced that. I think our understanding of mechanics maybe as well, of a passive club face versus a higher rate of rotation in the club face. But the loft stayed the same. Angle of attack certainly went up a little bit, and then path, went more to the right. So we were able to see why we're getting a little bit more distance, 8 more yards out of that draw shape. And obviously the counter, will hit a couple without staying on it too long. The counter to that with this neutral driver is the fade is going to be not an ideal place. So we'll hit a couple just to kind of show you that same thing. All right, let's hit some fades with the same driver setup and watch these numbers change. Not too bad. That's kind of the perfect example of the fade swing with a driver that's not really built for a fade swing. Hard to hit it much better than that. Strike-wise is good, out to in path, but dynamic loft went up. So we end up hitting the thing at 146 feet. Not ideal. Really, not many days you play golf where 146 feet is ideal when we're playing this game generally. So let's look at the numbers and compare the draw, neutral, and fade swings. So we lost a little bit of distance there, for sure. So you see with this particular driver, that yellow trajectory goes up a little bit, it comes down a little steeper. The distance sort of falls against us. We lose a little bit of speed relative to the draw, but we certainly gain launch and spin as we would expect. So that's where the customization, and you go, okay, well, with which swing does the driver match up best? Well, by far, the draw swing is what it matches up best with. As straight as the neutral delivery, but with more distance certainly than the other two. Much, much more what we would want. So let's go towards a more draw by swing and show you why more loft is going to be the real secret weapon for you. All right, guys, 10-degree driver. So now we've kind of discussed the setup for a draw player, a fade player, and a neutral player. We're going to then start to dive into the draw player playing with more loft and why that really is going to suit those of you who are a little bit more left biased with your ball flight. That extra loft is going to retain the spin. It's going to give you so much more control on the spin axis. When we narrow that spin axis, I'm going to just try to give you a little bit of an illustration here if I can down the lens. Not that easy. So imagine I had a piece of string between the sort of the ends of both of these sticks, right? And if I change the face to path relationship by, call it 5 degrees, the more I increase the loft and I keep the difference of the 5 degrees the same, you can really see how that starts to look like a vertical line if I had a piece of string between the tip of both of these alignment sticks. But as I squeeze that spin loft and keep the distance between the same of 5 degrees, it looks much, much more like, so that line went from looking like that to looking like much more like that as you sort of decrease the spin loft, okay? And what that does is it changes the spin axis tilt on the driver. That's why we need to increase dynamic loft when we start to get more in the rotation of the driver in terms of the draw. So it's not the easiest one to get your head around straight away, but it's why it's much harder to curve a wedge than it is to curve a 5-iron. Even with the same angle of attack and path The loft variable is what makes it much easier to curve the ball. When you start getting less loft, you can change the spin axis significantly more easily. So let's hit some draws and try and fall back into that ideal launch and spin window with the 10-degree driver. Okay, you'll see something here. Like I missed that in the worst spot for a driver in today's age, which was a little bit high in the head, maybe even a hair toey, but certainly was high. Yeah, high toe. 6 millimeters high, 7 millimeters toe. If I was using a 9 or a 10-degree driver, I am dead. That thing is spinning at 1300 and it's going to kill me. The reality is I've hit it 8 yards offline and it's went 301 yards. Because as a draw player, somebody who's swinging the club 3 degrees right, 5 degrees up with a face that's close to the path, I'm able to control the spin loft enough to have a stable ball flight. That is what, in essence, we would always do in the club fitting bay. You show me what you've got and I'll give you something that matches it, okay? We've got that component compatibility of the driver to the swing. That's always what we're looking for. Again, nice delivery, more rightward, probably a hair neutral, that one. It didn't really come down as much yet. Delivered a little bit too much loft. I'm leaning back a little bit on it there. All right, guys, so we're going to move into the lower loft. For those of you who tend to balloon the ball flight, struggle a little bit with distance with your driver, that's typically the slicers amongst us. There's obviously people who struggle with distance because they overhook it. They come too far from the inside. That's a delivery problem, not really something we want to kind of have equipment override, because in every scenario, we would rather our mechanics were what held our golf game together, not our equipment. Our equipment should enhance our golf game and certainly maximize its potential, but it shouldn't be there as a crutch or band-aid in order to mask what you really are struggling within your game. So let's move 1 degree less loft down. Well, it's actually 2 degrees. We were just hitting the 10. We're going to move now down to the 8 degree with the fade swing. Let's see what we get. All right, guys, so 3 very different lofts, same driver, and we're going to sort of break it down here. We said the 9 degree really needed to have the draw swing for me, which when we saw the path at 0 degrees, it was a little bit on the floaty side. Let's go to, in fact, ball data. We'll start over there. So really good sort of result with all 3. 155 ball speed, 14.4 launch, 2400 spin. A hair high in the launch, but I mean, pretty good overall. 290 is a pretty good result. Then we went to much more of the draw swing, which is path rightward, face higher rate of closure. And we saw that we actually, because we were up in loft, we were very, very similar. Within 2 yards of carry, within 2 yards of total, extremely similar, because we added loft to offset the amount of rotation in the club face, that additional rotation. And then finally with the GT3 8 degree, that's where the sweet spot was for my swing. So 13.2 launch, 2200 spin, and it went the ideal sort of distance for me. Let's look at the club data and see what changed as we changed delivery. So this is the moral of the story really is over here. Neutral delivery, draw delivery, fade delivery. And for me, actually, one thing I'm fairly good at is keeping angle of attack constant as the loft is moving. That's not something that you would really see all that often. I would say a lot of people, as they move towards the fade, get a little steeper, move towards the draw, get a little bit more up on it. I'm reasonable at keeping that angle of attack pretty consistent. But what does change, and this is where the volatility changes within the ball flight, is the amount of delivered loft. So there's our neutral delivery, 20 degrees. Our draw delivery actually was higher. So that's a bit of a me thing. Hanging back, when I know I've got to start it right, I tend to tilt a little bit more and get the hands rotating. When I get the freedom to swing left, I can rotate and actually keep my chest down, and I can deliver a little bit less loft. And that's why the lower loft with the fade swing is become my choice. I have done this test in my own time with all of the lofts of the drivers that I've had, and I've had a chance to take a look and see if I make the swing speed pretty consistent, which one is optimized for me. So generally speaking, the fade players go towards less loft. The neutral golfers, you'll find yourself in the middle ground, the 9, the 9.5s, and the draw players, you're the ones who need loft. 10.5, sometimes even 12. I get messages all the time on Instagram with people asking, you know, I'm 13 degrees of launch and 1200 spin, what's going on? And I don't even need to see their data. I go, well, you're swinging too much in, too out. I know that you're losing loft, your spin loft value. If we go back in again to here, the difference between the angle of attack and the dynamic loft. So we said the magic number was around 13. Well, I'm going to round this up to 18, and I'm going to round that down to 5. Okay, we're a couple of decimal points away from it, but the difference between the loft and angle of attack with the 8-degree driver is about 13, pretty much bang on for me. And that's where you get optimized launch, spin, and speed. Generally also, in that sweet spot, you'll find you end up striking it in the right window as well. If you're delivering the right amount of dynamic loft, you're typically delivering the sweet spot to the ball a little bit better. When I hit the draw, I typically tilt and I hit the ball a little bit lower in the head. If I'm a bit sort of more neutral, I'm okay, maybe a slightly lower in the head. But when I hit the fade, that's when I hit it highest in the head, for me personally. And that, again, is what really, really suits my ball flight. So guys, therein lies a little bit more depth and information in how you can pick the right driver loft for you. I think it's a really important topic to understand why your tendencies see you have more success with some lofts over others. Driver characteristics obviously come into it significantly. GT3 is a very low spin driver. If I was in a GT1, it would be going, you know, significantly higher, etc., etc. And we know what the manufacturers are looking for now. They're looking for high launch, low spin, and, you know, lowering the spin typically means we have to really manage the dynamic loft so we can optimize how far and how straight you're hitting the driver. So hopefully this one will start to settle, start to sink in. There's probably a lot of information as we dissect what the delivery characteristics are of the draw, the fade, and the neutral swing in terms of angle of attack, face-to-path relationship, and dynamic loft. But watch it and maybe watch it again just so that sinks in. And I think within the delivery, sort of 3 different deliveries we've given you with the 3 different driver lofts, you'll see yourself in there. And that's ultimately what we want. Knowing that if you're launching it too high and too much spin and not enough speed, you need less loft. Vice versa. If you're kind of knuckleballing it and the ball's really falling out the air, you need more loft and probably center gravity back as well. You can layer some other things on top, but that's generally the loft conversation that I would be having with you guys. All right, hope you enjoyed this video, guys. Pretty detailed one, but we do enjoy these ones, and we know most of you enjoy the detailed ones here on the channel as well. Stay tuned for more. We'll see you again soon.